Hi, this is Martin Drummond with Progressive News, or Progressive News with Martin Drummond. It's Monday, October 7th, 2019.
One of Singapore's landmarks is the Marina Bay Sands, a luxury hotel, high-end shopping areas, and a casino. But beneath it all is a sprawling underground city. More than 10,000 people spend their working hours here, including Helen Tanby Hong from the wardrobe department, which handles tens of thousands of uniforms daily.
I feel that if we are located underground, especially with our intensive operation,
really, why do people want to live in these places? Wouldn't they want to live somewhere else, except for that obviously they don't excuse me, they don't want to lose their income. They'd like to not lose their nationality and their friends and all this stuff. So they should probably end legal and illegal immigration and start thinking about, how they're going to survive all this. Anyway, never fails, right? Somebody calls when I'm in the middle of my news. So, I didn't hear the speaker mention, I watched this whole thing, overpopulation or population control. It's the obvious problem here, birth control. I didn't hear that mentioned. What's the main religion in Singapore? I've been there. I don't see a problem, but obviously they have one. What if the underground suddenly floods with people in it? They're talking about a small island, and very easily I can see I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I'm not going to say that, but it just seems like, sure, if they have to, but they definitely need to figure out, is there something wrong with controlling your population? The Chinese have done it, although it's led to some bad side effects, and I might be covering those later.
actually have the feel of being at home, and you have a closer link with other departments. You can discuss about work and get things solved easily.
Helen enjoys amenities like a 24-hour free buffet, a convenience store, and even an in-house clinic. But more crucial...
Man, give me the 24-hour buffet. I was in a nice hotel in Singapore when I was there. I lived in Indonesia. We used to stop and stay there for a while. And they had a hell of a buffet. Awesome. So yeah, sign me up. I'll live underground.
Actually, this underground enterprise frees up precious land on the surface. In fact, developments like these are playing a major role in the government's plans for the future.
With a population of 5.6 million people in an area about half the size of London, Singapore is running out of space. This year, the government has joined a handful of other countries mapping out subterranean space. It wants to move more infrastructure underground in order to make room for housing and green spaces on the surface.
Singapore already stores fuel and ammunition underground. It's built the first underground oil storage caverns in Southeast Asia.
Man, I'd hate to see those explode.
150 meters under a reclaimed island, and it's the equivalent of more than 80 football fields.
It makes economic sense.
I don't know how far they bury a nuke when they test it, and they don't do that anymore, I think. Maybe they do. Anyway, So if an explosion went off at 115 feet, I think they said it was, or meters. I forget already. I wasn't paying enough attention. But anyway, it'd be interesting to know what the damage would be up above.
To build underground for also strategic reasons. So if you have a strategic asset that you want to contain out of sight, heaven will become one very logical way.
But it's a complex and expensive endeavor. Developers say offshore land reclamation is cheaper, but it's not sustainable. Costs to fill deeper seas can escalate, and Singapore will eventually run out of sea territories. So for now, the government is focusing on moving urban infrastructures like data centers, bus depots, and sewage systems underground. Housing, however, is another matter.
There are still a lot of social and psychological issues to be addressed. We do need to see sunlight, and there could also be health issues. For example, if you don't have enough sunshine, there may be a lack of that.
Wild stuff, huh? All right.
U.S. House committees have ordered the White House to release documents on an impeachment inquiry against President Donald Trump. Chairman of the Oversight, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committee said the subpoena was issued after the White House's cover-up and failure to answer their requests for documents. They had earlier called on Vice President Mike Pence to submit documents on his role in conveying Trump's message to the Ukrainian spokeswoman.
I really think that Press TV is out to just a little bit unfair when a lot of times when they attack the United States, the way they do it. I mean, a lot of times I look at it and I'm like, it's really none of your business. And on top of that, what you're doing is, I think it hurts them. Because people look at them and go, well, that's kind of mean to say that, And I don't see where, a lot of their stuff is kind of up in the air. So,
Summoned the U.S. ambassador to Madrid to protest Washington's planned tariffs on over $7.5 billion worth of European Union goods. The Spanish government has rejected the move, saying it will respond immediately with strength and clarity if tariffs go into effect. Earlier, Germany raised the possibility.
So they like to highlight the problems between America and Europeans, and Europeans, and it's like they're trying to get everybody to fight, I majored in business administration, took a year of macroeconomics and several years of microeconomics, and in all that time I never heard the economy addressed as not having to do the work as a positive thing. Okay, what I mean by that is that, or maybe it did, because maybe they talked about the work ethic being handed down from the, pilgrims and stuff. I mean, there's definitely that issue brought up in economics. And really, I don't understand, because it's not like you can find a person in this world who doesn't like to be doing something and who doesn't mind, peeling the potatoes. You gotta eat, right? And, if you don't want to have a dirty house and suffer the consequences, then you enjoy vacuuming once in a while. And all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's not like I've never met a lazy person in my life. Now, I've met people who, if you tell them to work, they don't want to work because they don't like people telling them what to do, and yeah, that could be a problem, I guess. But overall, I've never met people who didn't want to pitch in, who, you know, felt comfortable with other people having to do the work for them, you know, because they wouldn't pitch in. I've never met anybody like that. You know, yeah, in certain instances when they're like disgruntled or you know, they feel like they're being treated unfairly. Yeah, sure. But overall, no. And so when you get to a point where you don't have to work to produce things like automation, or maybe you just have to work in a factory 2 hours a day, you know, if everybody does that, then everybody gets, you know, everything they want. Okay, so so what happens when the Chinese make all our stuff for us? Okay, they get money in return, right? They get paid, and apparently people in their country get dollars, you know, etc. But we get the stuff, and we don't seem to be unhappy that they sell it to us for very cheap. But you know what tariffs are really about? Tariffs are about taking money from the Chinese that they're making and selling it at a low price and giving it to somebody else. And you know what? I've yet to see the lamestream media do like documentary after documentary, because that's what you need to do to make it an issue, about where that money's going. You know, where is that money going for tariffs? You know, once in a while somebody like Tom Hartman will mention, well, that's earmarked for, you know, investing in our ports or something like that. But is that really all that there is to it? I mean, isn't there... I mean, I have to say, I think that some rich guy's making a lot of money here, and it may be a long way around and work its way through the system, and finally, but I know I'm not seeing a dime of it, but I am paying more. I mean, now they're putting taxes on the stuff I buy from China. You know, like I'll buy a hairdryer or something, you know, a blow dryer for $5, and all of a sudden there's like charge here and a charge there and import fee and all this stuff, and it's driving the price of this stuff way up. Well, guess what, Trump? I don't want to pay you for a blow dryer. It's enough that I got to pay China, you know, and the people who made it. But I really don't want to pay you. You know, but the work ethic is so ingrained into our psyche that we can't conceive of not working as being a good thing. I'm not saying if you don't work, if you don't have a job, you don't do stuff. Maybe you make plays for your communities or music, or maybe you do work, you know. I mean, I don't know, there's probably still going to be lots of jobs, you know. Sure, there's going to be. But anyway, you're going to find something to do, right? Maybe you'll be more healthy because you have more time to exercise. I don't know. But there's no such thing as feeling bad because, you're not working because there's no work to do. That's bullshit. I mean, I know that intrinsically, you know, inside of me, I can tell that there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I see it as a future thing that's good. And I still think there's going to be a lot of work to do, like figuring out how to clean up our water and our environment, and things like that. You know, we're still going to have to build some houses or maintain the ones that we've got and repair our cars, and pretty much what we're doing right now. You know, all this little services to our communities. It's always going to have some, and I doubt they're going to, well, no, I take it back. I mean, maybe they are going to, maybe they'll make robots that are better than us at fixing a car. Be able to do it faster and better, and you know, like, what's his name, the detective with all the Inspector Gadget. Maybe that's the future. I mean, there's one thing for sure, and that's that the rich constantly avoid work, right? Have you ever known? I mean, every rich guy I know sits in his office, really not doing much. You know, maybe he kind of fiddles with his company, trying to make sure he's got a handle on what's going on, but he's got a lot of free time. And what work he does do is fun, right? He calls his other rich guys. He needs parts, he needs information, whatever, and he sits around and talks with them and maybe makes a decision or two. Every once in a while he goes out and he's an asshole to somebody. You know, that's the life of a rich person. I mean, I know. You know, I spent 22 years in a business where I dealt with the rich constantly. As a matter of fact, I got to the point where I didn't want to deal with them because they're, from a business point of view, they're they're often undisciplined. They're also awfully irrational sometimes, and they don't want to understand your problems. They just want to tell you, and at some point you have to tell them, well, that's just the way it is, and then you risk losing your customer. But that's, you know, sometimes you gotta stand up for yourself. So why do we act like manufacturing stuff for other countries is preferable as a trade process? Why do we talk about the trade deficit? Ooh, those Chinese, they're sending so much stuff to the United States, and we're not really sending much back except for IOUs. Is that really? I mean, to me, that's, hey, thank you, Chinese. Thank you very much. I really like that new computer you sent me. And now my computer, you know, I paid for it, but my country gave you an IOU. You know, I worked and paid for it, but as So I don't get the, once again, I don't get the, I see where there's a huge disparity there, but it wasn't me who got in on it. It was somehow my country sending them an IOU instead of a cow, or whatever. I don't know, a ton of grain or something. I don't know what's, you compare. But that's what happened, right? And planes seem to be a big deal right now, right? Boeing's all fucked up, and does Lockheed still make passenger planes? But the Europeans are rolling, with the Airbus. They got this one. It's 2 stories. It's got 2 stories worth of people in it. I'm like, fuck, why haven't we done that? It seems like an obvious, and I guess it's safe, but man, wow, one of those crashes. And I say when, because I hope not, but God, what an accident. But the United States, of course, has its own problem, and so I assume that people are looking at it like, okay, we've got a trade deficit, and a lot of that was made up for when we used to sell people planes all over the world. And I suppose 90%, or I don't know what it is, but I suppose it's a real lot of our trade is bombs and weapons and stuff. And how do most Americans feel about that? Sending murder. That's the potential for these things. That's what they're gonna be used for if they're ever used. And how do we feel about that? I wonder. I know how I feel about it. I want to keep all the guns and bombs and stuff for us. No, I'm just kidding. But I do believe in self-defense, as a country. And I don't believe in arming the world. But maybe that's why it's being done. Maybe there's always a secret reason, with everything. My mom used to tell me she did that because she loved me. And I was like, no, Mom, you didn't do that because you loved me. You did that because you were mad and you wanted to get even. Okay? Be honest. But countries, well, they have their secret reasons for doing it. And I would assume that we sell weapons. Of course, the individuals who sell them, and Trump gets permission to sell and stuff, they may fudge on the reasons. They might not be very patriotic sometime. They may be more because if they give permission to Boeing or Lockheed or whatever, who makes tanks, I don't know, to sell to Egyptian dictator, then somehow that comes around back to the president, and nobody looks at that, because after he's out of office, nobody's even really bothering to check how he's getting his money. Oh yeah, once in a while when Obama makes a $400,000 speech for Goldman Sachs, and people just go like, oh, and the only reason that happened was because he did it too soon, right? He could have done it in 2 years, but anytime you do president does a $400,000 speech for Goldman Sachs. And I'll tell you what, all of these things we should require that they be documented, that they be recorded and put on YouTube or somewhere and not allowed to be taken off. Because all that screaming and yelling over Hillary's speeches should have never happened. You know, ever since she was a lawyer in Little Rock and she was involved in politics, she becomes a matter of public record. All of it. You know, her husband is governor. These public officials, they want to be big shots. Well, then we should have almost 24/7 monitoring of their activities. Who they're talking to, what they're talking about it. You know, you're not me just sitting around in my house doing this and that. You're affecting your people in Arkansas, then later in Washington, D.C. in the United States. We should have a right to make sure you're not screwing around, you know? You're not doing deals behind our backs. You're not arranging for people to be knocked off quietly by the Little Rock, Arkansas, or whoever they are. Somebody's killing off people. Well, when you look at that Clinton and Bush, forget what they call it, but people who have died mysteriously, it's ridiculous.
Of retaliatory measures in response to the U.S. move as it blamed Washington for choosing the path of confrontation. The U.S. announced tariffs on Wednesday after winning authorization from the World Trade Organization. The WTO ruling pertains to EU country subsidies to giant plane maker Airbus, which were described as illegal. And now joining us for this news review is Colin Campbell, Press TV correspondent out of Washington, D.C., and Jack Rasmus, professor of political economy, joining us from the St. Mary's College in San Francisco, California. Gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you both to the program. And now, Colin, we're going to start with you. Donald Trump thinks these tariffs, a lot of them with U.S. allies, are going to make America so-called great again somehow. Tell us the latest.
Well, it looks like Americans will have to pay a little bit more for their scotch, for their Italian wine or French cheese or British woolen clothing and other products coming from Europe after these tariffs go into place. $7.5 billion worth of goods coming into the U.S. will be taxed, essentially, and Americans will have to shell out a little bit more money for all of those. And this is over a 15-year trade dispute or subsidy dispute between Boeing and Airbus, where the French government has been subsidizing Airbus, and of course this is a direct competitor to Boeing, and of course this is saying experts and economists.
Yeah, but how much is Boeing subsidized? I mean, I know that our oil companies are subsidized billions of dollars. That the American consumer pays $3 a gallon, while the actual price is like $10, $15 a gallon. Government pays for that. It's a form of socialism, really. Everybody's kind of chipping in so that we have lower gas prices. But they never get into the details. They never talk about how much Airbus is doing this and how it becomes unfair. And wouldn't the answer be for the government to subsidize our planes just as much, to put them on equal footing? Why is it now suddenly the only option that we tax the American people for the difference? Make Airbus more expensive by taxing it and charging the American people. You know, this is all kind of topsy-turvy, if you ask me.
And of course, officials are saying that Boeing is losing money over the subsidies that France has been giving to Airbus. So the WTO has given authorization for these tariffs, and so that's where the Trump administration is really.
So one of the things I'm concerned about is where this plays out on the ground, right? Because it doesn't just play out in trade between us and them. It also plays out, because this is part of trade, in them trying to, if they can't get enough in trade, then their only option is to buy American assets. So to buy American companies, and I know we don't want them buying our tech companies, right? I mean, in fact, we want to keep our tech close, right? Close to us, because it's secrets, and stuff, and it's what makes us great. And no country wants to lose what makes it great, without a fight. And hopefully they're going to protect what makes it great completely. We've got all these people coming in to be students, and how much can they get? I was a student. I wasn't ever privy to any of the secrets of our country and manufacturing and stuff. So I don't know how much they can, how much does a Chinese engineering student at MIT leave with? How much does a Iranian guy working at Hewlett Packard, which is going out of business, well, not going out of business, but laying off thousands of employees. But how much do they, take with them when they go back to Iran? I'm thinking not much. I'm thinking the government's watching them, the institutions are watching them, the universities, the companies they work for are watching them. And in fact, we probably try and take what we can get from them rather than give them anything. But I'd really like to know just exactly how that works. But what I see is, so like a company comes into a country, buys up a whole bunch of real estate. What I'm saying is that they're not really allowed to use it or keep it. They're not necessarily, unless they're very favored, allowed to become American citizens. And like, say they bought an island somewhere on a lake and wanted to bring 500,000 of their friends. I mean, that's how many people there are in China. When they decide they want to do something on a population basis, there's tons of people involved. So, and are they allowed to stay on their little island and have a little China? I mean, we don't want that. I know that. As an American, as a white American, yes, I am a little bit protective of what's considered to be American culture. Now, everybody's making that out to be racist, but we have in our country, regardless of how many minorities complain about it, we've decided a long time ago that English is the language. It's the only language. We're not going to start allowing different parts of the country to adopt Spanish and French and German. All the Germans who've come to this country have learned English. I mean, there were pockets of them up to the 50s, but not anymore. And French and whatever. Even the English have learned English. So you can jump up and down, Oh, I'm a racist because I want people to learn English. But you're not going to get anywhere with that argument. Because we need to be able to understand each other. In fact, I advocate for a language, a world language, And I don't care which one you decide to have and how much, but I say to make it fair, you make it a combination of all the most, so some Chinese and some English and some French and some Arabic and some Russian and, you know, smaller countries, maybe even countries as big as Turkey might get left out because we can't have everybody. Or maybe we can, I don't know. Can you divide up a language into 178 countries, have them all? Maybe so. But I would be willing to do that. I wouldn't be willing to learn it. And you say, oh, see, there you are. You don't even want to learn it. No. But my kids, if I had any right now, you know, kids born today, if one of them or 10 of them were mine, I would require them to learn that language. And I'm sure as a result, I would learn a lot of it too. It would become their first language. English would be their second language, or Scottish, you know, or whatever. No, I speak American English. You know, and then everybody in the world would have to speak this thing in English, this language, this international language, the same way. I mean, no accents. Everybody would be trained from birth to speak it a certain way. Just like in America, you may have your dialects, but most people know how to speak like me. Because I've got a kind of a I may have a little bit of a southern accent now from living in Kentucky for so long, but really I have a general kind of close enough. You know, the way I speak is close enough to a American. So, you know, the problem that I'm talking about is they find out that they can't buy America. They can't come in and buy Manhattan or buy Washington, D.C. I mean, I don't care if they have $1 billion sitting in their banks. You know, they can't use it to buy up America, and that must frustrate them, you know. They can't get enough stuff. They can't buy enough stuff from us to equal out. But, you know, tough. You guys decided to do it, sell us all the stuff, manufacture all the stuff for us. I mean, we're more than happy to do it ourselves, I think. Are we? Maybe not. Maybe we got kind of used to, because Americans, you know, they work for themselves. Well, no, they work for the rich people, but in general, their jobs are doing work every day for people in their own areas or whatever, right? Maybe even some of them manufacture and sell stuff overseas. Now, yeah, I can see that. But mostly, the average American, most of them work just doing stuff for their own neighborhoods and stuff. You know, they work at Kroger's, you know, selling food or whatever. Work at the electric company or whatever. So, most of them are working for the Chinese, even though the Chinese are sending us all kind of stuff. So there's no quid pro quo there, right? There's no equality. So of course the Japanese are going to look for a way to spend those dollars, that trade deficit. And I already know what happens if and they do too. That's why they don't even bother anymore. Because as soon as they start buying up a lot of shit in America, somebody's going to notice. And I've seen it happen. And as a matter of fact, I may still have a piece that I did recently on Finland, where the Russians were coming in and buying up these islands, and they weren't allowing the Finns or the Finnish government to have a look around at what they're up to. And whether it was fair or not, because maybe it was just Russians having fun, and spending their money in Finland. But they took away all that land from them. And I'm sure that the Russians are now saying, okay, you want to be like that? Well, next time you want to buy a bunch of our oil, we'll see what happens, right? So you got all this shit going on, right? And it's kind of a problem of capitalism. Although trade isn't necessarily, I guess it is capitalistic, but in some instances, I suppose it isn't, because if somebody says they're not going to pay for something, or they're not going to trade, or they're not going to, and then you try to buy a couple islands from them with all your rubles, or Finnish, whatever they are, Finsters. And they say, sorry, buddy, but we're not going to we'll let you buy our islands, but then once you've got them, we're going to take them away from you. Hey! That doesn't sound very capitalistic to me. It sounds like theft. Okay, let's see what's next here. So when I see this stuff, I'm assuming that they're always saying that they're defending their country, right? But where's the aggressor? Everybody's calling each other the aggressor, even though, like in Syria, obviously the Russians and the Syrian Arab army, Assad, the beast Bashar, they're obviously the aggressors. But well, I'm not even going to get into this. I was going to cover this, but you know what? Wherever there's war, it's awful, man. People need to just find another way. I mean, we don't need these trucks doing these things. They can be moving wheat or something. Swords into plowshares, right? So I'm just going to send a message of peace. Every religion says they're about peace. Jesus, Muhammad, all of them. And I really do say, I don't want, I'm absolutely sure that we can find another way. Address people's grievances. Address them seriously. Let's all start doing that. I don't know.
Yesterday, a video was passed around online which spawned outrage. It spawned outrage in me too, but for a very different reason. The video was taken at a town hall in Queens, New York, with Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, who's been very vocal about the urgency of climate change and how we only have a few years left before we're all doomed. During the town hall, a woman stood up and started yelling. She said that while she loves the Congresswoman's Green New Deal, she believes it doesn't go far enough because our climate is changing too fast and we have to be more radical than that. She cites a Swedish professor who says that we can help fight climate change by eating dead people. And then the woman goes on to say that even that's not far enough. In order to save the planet, we need to start eating the babies. And she's yelling this with passion and saying that she's a big supporter of Ocasio-Cortez, but there's just too many people out there. So we gotta start eating.
Yeah, I saw the clip of her talking. And the reason that people took it seriously is because it's a really serious matter, right? And so is what we do with our dead people. I mean, littering the world with, graveyards. It's almost as stupid as having golf courses. It's not going to work after a while. I mean, we're already at a point where we can't really justify it, right? And, she's talking about, well, how do you possibly take this person seriously? Well, you don't take the person seriously in terms of, yeah, we should do it. We should eat babies. I mean, she's talking about killing live babies and eating them. I mean, obviously, she was joking. But for people who didn't understand that, or maybe thought she was talking about dead babies or something, God, this is gross. Anyway, my point is that the reason so many people took it seriously is because it's such a serious matter. No matter what, if it was a joke or what, they're still serious about the problem. Matter of fact, the reason she's making this kind of satire out of it is because she wants to get attention for the problem. So that's why. Now this thing, I mean, and let me say, okay, first of all, this is an American woman, and we don't know for sure, but apparently she was driving on the wrong side of the road, because Americans drive on the right side of the road, right? So maybe she forgot for a minute, and she hit this young guy on a motorcycle, and who knows whether there was, it was obviously an accident. Anyway, the American woman, skips town back to the United States. And to be honest, I'm going to tell you, this woman doesn't even seem believable. I mean, this young guy, I don't know how old he was exactly, but I mean, the American is probably saying, well, I had an accident and I shouldn't have to pay a lot of money or spend any time in jail over it because it was an accident, And this whole subject is interesting, right? Because, I mean, how much should you pay? And how much do people pay for accidents? Does it really depend on how negligent they were? Because, in Britain, they're the empire. And oh my God, if anybody treads on them. So they're starting to see, the United States saying, sorry, England. Send us Julian Assange. Stupid Americans. Anyway, so she just, I mean, I'm sure she feels bad. But for all I know, she hated her kid. I mean, a lot of parents do, right? A lot of parents and kids hate each other.
How she's coping. The truthful answer is that she's not. Not only has Charlotte lost her 19-year-old son, She also may never see the person responsible held to account.
And she may never get the $5 million. Or whatever. You know what I mean? And who knows, maybe that's what she's the most upset about. And so often, there's so much unfairness in all of this, right? I mean, I find it hard to believe that trials, because I've experienced the judicial system, they're more about whoever controls the courts, you know, getting their way and getting their money and stuff like that. And there's no looking over their shoulders. There's no one looking over their shoulders. I mean, get an unfair judgment against yourself. You know, get thrown in jail for something you didn't do, and try to find out where the mechanism is for you to get justice. Who is out there looking at the court that threw you in jail unfairly? The FBI? The state attorney generals? I don't know. I mean, I haven't started looking into it. I've contacted the state attorney general's office in my case. You know, but they're all from the same ilk. They're all conservatives, except maybe if they're Democrats, they're less conservative. But they're not in a big hurry to do anything about injustice done to anybody except themselves. You know what I mean? And people, well, there's all kinds of people, right? I have a feeling she's a scumbag, honestly. I'm just going to tell you. I mean, I'm sure she feels bad. But that kid looks a little snot-nosed, like a little snot-nosed 19-year-old immature, you know. And so many are. I mean, there's 50 years olds that are snot-nosed brats, you know. They never grew up, never matured. I have the feeling this is one of them. And probably crazy and smart ass, like to show off and all kinds of stuff like that. And who knows? Maybe this time he was, you know, not paying attention and got killed. But either way, I don't buy this. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to show you this, because I don't buy her story. Smacks of, even though she automatically, as the mother, gets a certain amount of, you know, certain amount of credit. But I feel like she's one of those kind, and prove me wrong, you know. Go show me how they were a loving family who I don't even know if the kid lived with her. And at this point, I don't even want to find out. The remedy: confronting class and politics.
Welcome to The Remedy.
Wow,
I'm
that's
Jamal Simmons.
noisy.
Today we are talking about race and politics. Here with us is author and law professor Ian Haney Lopez, who just...
And we're still talking about race because a tiny sector of America has refused to end institutional racism. Capitalists refuse to allow equal access to capital, something that affects more than just black people, but all minorities and even white people who refuse to kowtow to them. How they control the judicial system is simple. They control who the judges are. Stuff like that. So, you know, when I see something like this, I have trouble with it, because I don't believe that the racism that exists has anything to do with me or the vast majority of Americans. You know, really, I think that our banks should be open to everybody who's got a good idea. And you know how I feel about income. And by the way, while we're on that, well, I've already covered basic universal income, and I do believe that there should be a basic universal income based on, you know, what a person's needs are to be normal and to be viewed by others as normal. And I mean, it absolutely ought to be controlled. You know, as a matter of fact, don't even give people money. Give people things. You know, it's kind of like what we have now, food stamps. But we need housing. I need a house. I don't have a house. I don't have a place to live. I'm just renting a room. And in my case, it's okay, but I'm just saying, you know, obviously you can't give a heroin addict $1,000 a month for rent and expect them to really spend it on it. So obviously there has to be some control on basic universal income. But when I see these, I'm just sitting here thinking, wait a minute, why are we talking about racism again? Well, because the powers that be won't do anything about it. It's another one of those situations where, yeah, the rest of America's looking forward to it, you know, let's do something about it, but goddamn rich, they're not willing to let us do anything about it. There's no money for it, and there's no media for it, which would result in the money. So in Ecuador was doing just fine until they elected this motherfucker. And by the way, I can say motherfucker because YouTube doesn't pay me a dime for my news show. Okay? I don't even know how other people manage to survive on YouTube's dimes. Yeah, this guy's a piece of shit, you know, and most Ecuadorians are upset with him about what he did to Julian Assange. This guy is just I mean, look at him, he's a fucking mafioso. And why is it that as soon as the United States gets their guy in, whether the elections were fair or not, because even if they're fair, you have to ask yourself, well, what's the media doing? Are they swinging the election? Because that's what happens in the United States. I mean, we'd be firmly in the socialist, you know, court if the media didn't have control of all this stuff. So, I mean, I know what these guys are up to. But as soon as they get in charge, in Argentina and Peru, anywhere, the whole country starts to go up in arms. They're like against them because they're assholes. Okay, I think I covered this right. So Bernie, really? Do you really want me as a taxpayer and the rest of the taxpayers to pay for people to get their dicks cut off? I'm serious. Or sewn back on somebody else? Because if so, you know, pay me for my 100-inch TV in my man cave, because it affirms my macho gender nature. I mean, I've warned you about this, Mike. You know, Mike Figueredo. Of the Humanist Report. One of my favorite people, by the way. But I've warned you. You're going to lose elections for progressives. I mean, progressive does not mean that you're out there on the fringes. That's far from it. As a matter of fact, progressives stand for reality-based. And reality-based is that Americans are not going to pay for somebody's exorbitant plastic surgeries or fancy cars or gender-affirming surgeries. It's just not going to happen, man. You're going to lose. You're going to lose this for us, and I'm not going to let you. Because I'm sorry, Bernie, but no matter how much you, and we're still sticking with you, but most of the Democrats, most progressives, aren't going to agree with you on this one. You know, just stick to gay rights. The right to have sex and behave any way you like in your own home, short of breaking the law. I mean, obviously, beating somebody half to death just because it turns you on isn't gonna, you know, we find out about it, we're gonna break down your door and drag you off to jail. I'm not even sure if it can be consensual. But other than that, just having sex, and well, even though it's not sex, it's mutual masturbation, but it's, you know, you guys like to call it sex because it makes you feel better. You know, you can behave any way you like in your own home, short of breaking the law and all this other stuff. You're just going to lose a lot of votes to Republicans and to progressives. There's plenty of progressives and definitely conservative Democrats who aren't going to vote for this. And I find that it comes down to three different things. So abortion, gun laws, and immigration. Liberal Democrats are going to have to bow to Democrats who believe in the rights of the baby. I mean, I don't know when a fetus becomes a baby, but, you know, when that nervous system forms and somehow it's able to sense the fact that it's in the mother's womb, you know, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I don't know. But experts can determine that. Okay, at that point it becomes a baby. And I don't think I am on the side of, you know, Christian fundamentalists here. I mean, I think they believe in it being like at conception or something. Nuts. Or within weeks. I don't think so. But at the same time, when it becomes a baby, it has all the rights of a human American under the Constitution, and you can't kill it. I don't care how much you think it's your own body or whatever arguments you come up with. Forget it. And Bernie, you're going to have to back us on this. Sorry. If it makes some of your other... It's too bad that, you know, we can't come up with logical and reasonable reasoning to handle all this, because then everybody just about would agree. guns, Americans have a right to protect themselves, especially in a dangerous America where too many people have guns. You know, you take away most of the guns except for the ones to protect themselves. And you know, just having a pistol around, I gotta say, man, it opens up the opportunity for somebody to just blow somebody else away. But right now, with all the people running around with guns and house and home invasions and things like that, I don't see any way around letting people have their guns. Immigration, you know, closed borders or picky borders that only take, you know, the very best people and only based on how much we feel we can support them, provide for them. That's that, you know, I'm sorry, but you may not like it, but I think people are pretty solid on all three of these. And Bernie, if you think you're going to find enough radicals in these three areas to win an election, I think you're wrong. I think you have to address people's concerns, address their grievances. And you have to do it honestly and with logic and reason. And that includes babies, fetuses that have become babies, and people who are afraid and they want to protect themselves. Not the nut jobs, just the people who want to protect themselves. And, you know, every American's heard of the fifth column. How Rome allowed its Italy to be flooded with like Vikings and all kinds of people. And that led to the fall of Rome because it just didn't have enough. So I feel the same way, man. You know, you want to tell me that I have to let millions of Mexicans into Texas so that they can turn around and vote Texas into their own hands. And so all of a sudden Texas and maybe Arizona and whatever, all of a sudden they're going to declare themselves Spanish first language. Give me a break, man. We can't let that happen. And the people there are not going to let it happen. I mean, there's some rough Americans down there. Are they overreacting? I'm not so sure. I mean, I know a lot of Mexicans down there, Mexican Americans, and there's tons and tons of Mexicans. And when this guy went into El Paso and shot all those Mexicans, what were that many Mexicans doing in an El Paso Walmart? You know, is El Paso American? Mexican American? European American? Blacks? Or is it part of Mexico now because you've let so many people flood in that you can walk into a Walmart and if you shoot a bunch of people in there you can pretty much count on them being Mexican citizens? What is going on down there? And why was that young man willing to give his life? Because that's what he did, to bring this to our attention. Look, I demand that right-wing nutjobs give us a listen, and I demand they listen to our grievance. Don't you think that we should be expected the same? Don't you think that we should have to listen to their side of the story and see their, you know, proof and stuff? As a matter of fact, there was something I just saw. Let me grab it real quick. Okay, so I just happened to run across this. And I think, of course, these guys are trying to, like, make this guy look racist and stupid. but I don't feel like they did a very good job.
Marcus Ely here for Status Coup, and I am here with Angus Smith here at the Trump stop, the rally out here just outside of Kingman, Arizona. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you out here today?
Well, I'm a political refugee, granted asylum in the free state of Arizona from the People's Republic of California. I left 3 years ago. I did not like their laws, and I walked in my assemblyman's office, got copies of their new laws. When he came out and said, "Hi, I'm Eduardo. Were we able to help you?" And I says, "You did enough, you dumb son of a bitch. Get the out of my sight." In his office.
Wow.
So then I moved to Arizona. So I believe in freedom, and that's why I'm here.
And speaking of freedoms and whatnot, one of my favorite quotes from the founding fathers was the tree of freedom must sometimes be replenished with the blood of revolutionaries. The president has recently tweeted about there being a civil war-like fracture if he gets impeached. What do you as a Trump supporter think about that?
I think the Democrats that are raising all the scandals should be tried for treason and hung from the Capitol dome. Pure, flat out, and simple. So if they want to play games, okay, they have violated their oath of office in supporting the president. They need to be hung for treason.
So their oath of office includes supporting the president in all things every time?
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit about what else?
I'm sure that's his gotcha moment, what he came for. But this guy, has a right to his opinion, and who knows, maybe he's right. Maybe Democrats are so wrong on this particular matter that, I'm not going to say whether he's right as to the punishment, but maybe he's right as to something, whose side you're on. But that's not what I'm here for today. But
What would happen? Let's say they do impeach him. There is no tried for treason, and they do impeach this president. What happens in that situation when Trump sends out the call? He says, "Hey, look, this is a witch hunt. It's a hoax. They're trying to get me. I'm not going out. Let's start a civil war. Everybody join me." What happens in that situation?
I'm not going there. No.
All right. Well, no, I wanted to ask. Understand that you don't want to go there. So let's transition a little bit to the situation at the border.
Yeah, I gotta say, that was a smart answer.
We have the fake news media saying that.
Have you ever driven down Interstate 8 between Yuma and Casa Grande?
No, sir, I have not.
That is one trip you should make and see the highway signs that are on Interstate 8. Warning people, do not leave the road. This highway, this area is controlled by illegal aliens and drug smugglers. These are highways warning us not to go there. You have people that live in Tucson on ranches that are on the border that cannot leave their houses without fear of their houses being broke into and stuff taken by illegals crossing. You have the Mexican drug cartel putting spotters on top of mountains up there with a cell phone and car batteries to inform the smugglers where the Border Patrol and law enforcement are.
This has the ring of truth. So, at this point, I'm thinking they came down here to get this guy on a gotcha moment as to whether he's right or not about it. Washington, and certainly I'm not going to argue about whether we should be hanging people or not, because I'm not a judge and jury. obviously all the facts would have to come out. But at this point, you got to be wondering, what's he talking about? Are we really in a situation where people are fearing for their lives because Mexicans won't stay on their side of the border, and the drug cartels and people are sitting on hills on the other side of the border waiting for a chance to take advantage of Americans? You know, I don't like that.
So they can go around them. You have groups of this is years ago. You have groups as many as 400 crossing the border at a time through washes. And you have mayors like the mayor of Tucson saying, oh, we don't have any smuggling here. And when Channel 5 in Phoenix gave them the film footage they set from a game camera up of 400 illegals going up the wash, he goes, oh, we do have a problem. So that's my opinion. Have you gone down and looked? Most of these representatives have not. This is our country. We should not be warned not to go someplace in our own country because somebody else is there.
So folks should not be told that they can't go somewhere in their own country, regardless of the situation. That's what.
Yeah.
What about men's restrooms? What about men's restrooms? Women shouldn't be told to go in men's restrooms?
No. You're born that way, you live that way. If you want to do something, there's an outhouse over there.
I'm just pointing out a basic hole in the logic, because like you said, anybody should be able to go anywhere in their country. So like,
it's a right of privacy. I know.
And this is where the guy in blue, the black guy, goes off the reservation. Because he's calling it a point of logic, and yet 99% of Americans don't want, would you, if you're an 18, 17-year-old girl in a bathroom trying to go to the bathroom, would you want this white guy coming in to the bathroom? Would you want that black guy coming in the bathroom? I mean, with all the crime and sexual abuse and all the stuff that goes on in this country, really? I mean, I understand that there's some women who are a problem in women's bathrooms, but come on, man. This turns out to be a gotcha moment, a real gotcha moment for status quo. And, you guys have a right to make your own mistakes. I understand that. And this is one of them. You just made a mistake. You don't seem to understand where logic and reason falls on this subject, let alone the way the American people fall on the subject. And you know what? 90% of the time, after everybody talks about it for a while and everybody gets kind of semi-educated on the subject, they do fall on the logic and reason side. It does, it's very hard to stay stubborn for a long time.
If my daughter was still in school and some boy went in the girls' restroom, I'm sure my sons would have taken care of him. He would have had the crap beat out of him. You don't do that. It's respect.
Really? I mean, good answer. I don't know if this is over yet. Yeah, it was over. Okay, so that's it for our news today. I've covered all my stories I wanted to cover, and I'm glad you listened. And I know I may piss some of you off, especially liberals because liberals, I mean, they're so out of whack, and they're as bad as Fox News, the other side. They just, they don't want to hear it. They just think they got it all figured out, Gay people should be able to do everything else they want. Gay people should be able to, run around annoying straight people in public and trying to be pushy about their sexual agenda or whatever, and all kinds of stuff, Well, guess what? It's never worked. It's never going to. And fortunately, I represent the vast majority of progressives, because most of them aren't liberals. I mean, most of the liberals are stuck over there in the Democratic establishment side. They're over there with Hillary Clinton and all these other douchebags. And more Republicans, who aren't crazies, are listening to people like me, especially when they hear what I have to say about abortion and gun laws and immigration. Because, we're not unreasonable, and we do want to listen to all of your complaints. When you're upset, when you're legitimately upset, we're going to listen to you. If you don't have the facts on your side, sorry. We're going to try and convince you to understand the facts. So, this is Progressive News with Martin Drummond. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.